Today's project is to look for the Great Swamp of Elmhurst. And in order to understand the Great Swamp of Elmhurst, part of what you need to do is understand the high ground and the low ground in the area. I'm at Butterfield Park at the top of the hill, and I'm looking down towards York Road, and you can see the drop here. Using the old topographical maps proved to be a little bit of a challenge. I don't really have the computer skills to figure out how to convert a PDF into JPEG, TIFF, bitmap in order to float them into the photo processing software and manipulate the images. Elmhurst is on its own map from about Madison Street all the way north up into Bensonville, and then the south section here, this is the Hinsdale quadrant, which all the way goes down to downtown Hinsdale and beyond. Additionally, when I ran these out on the printer, I had an east-west section, so I did some manipulation manually, the old-fashioned way you do in graphic arts, a little bit of cut and paste, really cut and paste. But this image we're looking at is interesting because it shows the series of Elmhurst swamps. Over here, this area right here is Mount Carmel Cemetery and Hillside, and Hillside is high ground. There's a ridge that runs through Elmhurst that's high ground that goes from the southeast to the northwest. This is Butterfield Road here. Butterfield Road. This is York and Butterfield. Down in here, this area here is what I call the Great Elmhurst Swamp. This is Old York Road and how Roosevelt used to be configured. In the old days, prior to 1938, this swamp was so deep and dirty they couldn't even put a road through. And you can see it jogs to the south, then it jumps back up, and then when it gets over here, it actually jogs to the north again. And just after the county line, just after it gets into Cook County, it finally returns to a straight line. Now what's interesting about South Elmhurst is from the county line, which is this dotted line here, there's a whole series of swamps and sloughs that follow Roosevelt Road. And my main interest is the big one, which is right at York Woods and the brand new Elmhurst Hospital. But you'll see these little ponds here, and then in OakBrook itself there's still a couple low spots and ponds. Also, interesting enough, when you get down past Salt Creek, Butterfield Road is here. This is an old map, so it doesn't show Illinois Route 83 Kingery Highway, but that came through approximately in this area here. This whole section down here is an old peat bog, and to this day they're still trying to fill it in. This is a close-up of the same map showing the Great Elmhurst Swamp down here. Again, you can see how Roosevelt Road used to bend and went through the forest preserve. And this is a pretty good size area, 20, 30, 40 acres. And then you can follow the low spot between all the hills, and there's a lot of old seasonal streams that have kind of disappeared. For example, here's one up at about Old York and Harvard that shows it starting up in the area of Chatham and Butterfield. Way over here is a seasonal stream that starts in what is now the back lot of the Water Commission at the county line, and it runs to the southeast towards Mount Carmel Cemetery. The swamp does show up a little bit on the 1938 aerial photo. Reference points are kind of hard to find, but if you can imagine Old York Road here and Roosevelt Road here, at this point the jog where Roosevelt used to go around the swamp, that's been eliminated and a section of highway has been put through. you can see that the swamp is almost a diamond point at the bottom edge of the swamp, and then it kind of went up into this quadrant here where the car dealer used to be, the hospital is now. Here's a representation highlighting the swamp with these marks down here. Again, Old York Road is here. Way up at the top is York and Butterfield. Again, this is the 1938 aerial photo, and the area is pretty rural. You have woods to the south, very few homes, mostly farms. The future development of South Elmhurst, one of the great stories where the developer put in the sidewalks, graded the streets, planted the trees, and then the Great Depression happened and a lot of that area never got developed for another 10, 20, even 30 years. Here is a graph. The two axes are not, they don't have the same calibration, so to speak. The distances don't match, so this is more of a picture graph. But this is just to show you the distance, the drop. Butterfield Park, Butterfield Road around Cedar, Hillcrest, Stratford is some of the highest ground in the area at above 700 feet above sea level. And when you go from Butterfield Park down to York and Roosevelt, which is where the swamp is, the center of the old swamp, you can see a considerable amount of slope. We're talking 30, 35, 40 feet, so you can imagine how the rain runs down that hill. Here's another one. Now this one runs at a slightly different angle. It's north to south, with Butterfield Park being the far northern part of the graph. In the middle is the location of Old Yorkfield School, kind of where it levels out. And way off to the side you can see Roosevelt Road. So again, you're seeing a drop of from 700 feet above sea level to 675 feet above sea level, a minimum distance of 25 feet. This is a copy of the 1842 surveyor's map for the area. This is one of the earliest known maps for the general area. Reading through the information, this is section 13 of York Township, and the bottom line of section 13 is the line what is now Roosevelt Road. And the surveyors off to the sides here in several places back in the 1840s had marked swamp, swamp, swamp. And over at what would be 83 and Roosevelt, they have a swamp marked here and another one marked up over here. This is a very modern map of Elmhurst. This is a large-scale copy of the zoning map of Elmhurst that I obtained from City Hall. We're looking at the cloverleaf for York Road and Roosevelt. This particular section of York Road was built in 1960. Up over here, Old York Road diverges from the new version of the street at Lexington. It came down to the line of Roosevelt Road, and then it kicked back. This is an interesting landmark because if you can go to this location where Old York is located and then look westward, this is a big part of that diamond where the swamp was located. So whenever you drive across this area, you're driving through the old swamp of Elmhurst. I'm heading towards York and Lexington, and what a lot of people don't realize is that in 1960, York was rebuilt and straightened, and I'm turning onto Old York Road. I'm now proceeding south on Old York Road. That's York Road over there. And I'm heading over towards the eastern edge of the Great Swamp of Elmhurst. Up until 1960, York Road would have crossed Roosevelt at about this location here. After 1960, York was improved, and ironically they're still improving it. And there's the hospital over there. York Road is where the car is at the top of the hill. And right here, we're looking at the eastern edge of the Great Swamp of Elmhurst. On the far side of Roosevelt Road, there used to be a trailer court over there, and Old York Road continues through there, and there's a small section of the forest preserve. Somewhere in this general area was one of the pioneer houses of the old York Township settler days. A man by the name of Philander Terode built a native quarried stone house, and that was demolished in 1960 when York Road was improved. I'm now on the frontage road right in front of the hospital, and in a moment you'll see a clip of what this looked like 2 years ago during one of the floods. The swamp was on both sides of Roosevelt Road here. And even in recent memory, on the north side of the frontage road coming up, there was a big swampy area. Right back in there, even if this area wasn't always perpetually wet, this has always been a kind of a damp, boggy area. I have a anecdote from a friend of mine who used to ride his bicycle in this general area, back in the late 1930s and early 1940s, and he would talk about how he'd go down Butterfield Road, just about where Bryan Junior High is, where Timothy Christian is, and he said the cattails came up the Butterfield Road in that area. Right here we're driving through the heart of the swamp, and we're approaching York Road. We're now going east. That's the forest preserve over there. We're on the York Road viaduct going over Roosevelt. This is almost dead center, a part of the swamp. This little low spot we're coming up on here, a friend of mine has lived down here for decades, likes to talk about they've been filling in this low spot right here every 10 years or so. It just keeps sinking. We're going to head towards the Roosevelt Frontage Road and Harger Road. And off to the side here, you can see how they built up these berms. This is all part of the old swamp down here. And the terrain has been radically reconfigured. I was down here yesterday doing a project on the original Roosevelt Road that ran through this area. And I got to thinking that I now have enough materials to do a project on the Great Swamp of Elmhurst. And where I'm standing along Roosevelt Road, the Roosevelt Frontage Road, this was part of a series of swamps and bogs that went from Salt Creek all the way to the Cook County line. The swamp is in this general area. In fact, it went well into the forest preserve, and there's places in the forest preserve where the ground rises up and then it drops down a little bit more. And this whole area through OakBrook, we're very close to Salt Creek, and the creek has changed courses many times. And way back down there, there's even a pond that was part of the old creek. The northern edge of the swamp would have went up to just about where the front door of the brand new hospital. Where the parking lot and the detention pond is, that was part of the Great Swamp. From about where I'm standing, oh, this would have been the western tip of the deep part of the swamp. Just past the viaduct there, the York Road viaduct, that would have been the eastern edge of the deep part of the swamp. However, beyond there, up from the county line, back behind this view, all the way to Salt Creek, this was all a very low, swampy, boggy area. I enjoy doing projects like this. I've lived in this area for decades. Over the years, I've collected old aerial photos, family photographs from different families, lots of different maps, knowledge of the infrastructure. I'm at a point in my life where I'm seeing some parcels of land being built the third time around. When I grew up in this area, the last of what we called the prairie was being covered over. I got to see the town being filled up, parceled out, covered over, and we're coming into an era of almost complete reconstruction of the town. I realize some people might say, so what, you know, who cares about history like this? But when you start spending a lot of time in a community, you do start noticing little quirks, and it's kind of a good thing to know where the swamps used to be. You know, you don't really want to be building on top of the swamp. You don't want to be taken by surprise when the heavy rains come and suddenly you're flooded out. I'm now back at History Headquarters. I'm wrapping this thing up. Just wanted to let folks out there know that some of this material is available online or directly from the government. The USGS maps are available at the USGS site. I think it's called Earth Explorer. You should be able to find it online. There's a number of different contour maps available, and there's a series that goes through the 1928, 1950 series, and I believe a 1970 series. I prefer this older series because it shows the Elmhurst, Hinsdale, OakBrook area before it got built up, so it's easier to read the contours on those particular maps. The 1938 aerial photos, these are available online. I believe the site is called Illinois Clearinghouse for Aerial Photography, but the USGS also has a number of aerial photos online. The problem with the USGS photos is you have to do a little tinkering computer-wise to get the downloads to work right. Local governments usually have maps. This is the one I got from City Hall in Elmhurst. You know, there's also flood maps available online. I think those are available from FEMA, possibly the Army Corps of Engineers. So I hope you enjoy the little bit of insight, and I'll be doing a few more of these in the future.